listener production.
From the briefing team, this is The Beefing.
Hey, it's Helen Smith here. Welcome to the first episode of The Beefing, our new series where we break down everything from celebrity stoushes, political feuds to sporting spats. We'll be dropping new beefings in your feed every Tuesday and Thursday. And today's beef is between Trump's health secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his family. This is the man who just this week linked the pain reliever Tylenol, which is the same medicine as paracetamol or Panadol, to autism, claiming that taking paracetamol is no good for pregnant women, which has been heavily disputed and goes against doctors, health professionals and governments around the world. And he's expected to release his long-awaited report on the causes of autism anytime now, with experts in the field of autism spectrum disorder saying it's a complex syndrome that has been studied for decades and will not be straightforward, calling his efforts misguided and unrealistic. But with all of that said, let's get into it. Family feuds are more common than not, but the feud between Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his family holds the potential to create global consequences and, well, chaos. He's been called a threat to the health and well-being of every American and even a predator by members of his family, including by the former US ambassador to Australia. Now, the Kennedy name is synonymous with power, leadership, and politics, and there's so much to this family's story. But this ep zooms in on Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is no exception, as he's currently Trump's health secretary. He's the nephew of America's 35th president, John F. Kennedy, and the son of Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, who both lost their lives to assassins, JFK in 1963 and RFK Sr. during his 1968 presidential campaign. But this line from the New York Magazine sums it up pretty well. Only one cousin is in a position of power and his family can only watch helplessly as he destroys much that they stood for. But let's backtrack a little. How did this family feud begin? Well, RFK Jr. studied as an environmental lawyer and gained traction for spreading conspiracy theories and questioning scientific research, often positioning himself as someone who is better qualified than scientists to understand diseases and epidemiology, which is a pretty strong statement. And some of his messaging is just downright dangerous and more often than not completely false with no evidence, which his family love to point out. He's amplified unfounded claims that vaccines are tied to autism in children, prompted the false idea HIV is not the cause of AIDS, and baselessly linked certain antidepressants to a rise in school shootings. And he's even suggested that the use of certain herbicides, which are pretty much substances to kill weeds, to a rise in young people coming out as transgender. And his family, they're some of his biggest critics, with many of them right now calling for him to resign as health secretary, including his sister and nephew, over his anti-vaxxer views and, quote, the decimation of key public health institutions. Now, side note, all of his kids have actually been vaccinated, which has been confirmed on record by RFK Jr. himself, along with him saying he would give and pay anything to go back in time and not vaccinate his kids. But back to his sister, Kerry Kennedy, who said medical decisions belong in the hands of trained and licensed professionals, not incompetent and misguided leadership, which kind of makes sense, right? But we'll get into that a little bit later. Firstly, though, this feud all started to blow up when RFK Jr. started to endorse Donald Trump back in 2024 after abandoning his independent presidential campaign. Now, during his independent campaign, the grandson of former President JFK, Jack Schlossberg, slammed him on socials, saying his candidacy was an embarrassment and that he has no idea why anyone thinks he should be president, saying that he's trading in on Camelot, celebrity and conspiracy theories and conflict for personal gain and fame, not mincing his words there. And he doubled down on those claims, sitting alongside his mum, Caroline Kennedy, who was the former US ambassador to Australia, essentially agreeing that RFK Jr. was and arguably still is abusing the family name. Now, Caroline Kennedy was actually the one to call RFK Jr., her cousin, a predator, saying he was addicted to attention and power.
Today, while he may encourage a younger generation to attend AA meetings, Bobby is addicted to attention and power. Bobby preys on the desperation of parents of sick children, vaccinating his own kids while building a following hypocritically discouraging other parents from vaccinating theirs.
So how did he respond? Well, by ignoring the question when asked, which is very politician-esque of him. Now, this pile-on from his family comes right now because he holds a lot of power over America's healthcare system. He's in charge of the nation's highest healthcare office and oversees US $1.7 trillion in federal spending. And his Make America Healthy Again movement has been called a radical new approach to healthcare. And the movement's followers include mothers promoting an alternative wellness lifestyle and medical freedom activists, which have got scientists and healthcare professionals up in arms, and for good reason, because the movement challenges big pharma, the food industry, and government regulation, and has resulted in thousands of layoffs within the public health policy system, scientific research, and funding for vaccines. But his recent anti-vaxxer views have seemed to even catch Trump by surprise, with the president saying he is supportive of vaccines.
But you have some vaccines that are so incredible. And I think you have to be very careful when you say that some people don't have to be vaccinated. It's a very tough position.
The fact that Donald Trump sounds like the rational one in this situation tells you everything. And finally, you might be thinking, how did someone like RFK Jr. become a health secretary without being a health professional or even an expert? Well, when you come from such a prominent and historically democratic family, doors open. And when's the last time you've seen a politician in power who is actually fit for the job? So this feud doesn't seem like it's going anywhere anytime soon until RFK Jr. steps down as health secretary, which doesn't seem very likely. But that's it for today's beefing on RFK Jr. and his family. If you like this episode, we'd love it if you could share it with someone else you think might enjoy it as well. It's a really easy way you can support everything we do here at The Briefing. And tell us what beef you want us to sink our teeth into next. You can DM us on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. Until then, I'm Helen Smith. Catch you next time.